So we've got a lot of ground to cover here, talking about Litecoin Foundation, talking about the Bitcoin, the Litecoin roadmap, talking about how Litecoin relates to other cryptocurrencies. And so I've got some questions lined up. Let's first of all just start with SegWit. You know, I want to talk about the implementation of that and how that worked for Litecoin. Do you want to start off, Charlie?
Yeah. So is my mic on?
Is the mic on?
Yeah. Okay, good. So SegWit, let me, I guess, talk a bit about the history. So I think in 2016, SegWit was proposed as an upgrade to Bitcoin, kind of a way to solve Bitcoin's scaling problem in a win-win situation where it's a soft fork and it solves scaling by effectively doubling the block size and also allows building Lightning Network. Right. So when I first heard about SegWit at a Scaling Bitcoin conference, I was like, this is like an amazing solution because you can do it in a soft fork, so it's safer, and it helps scale, double the block size, so it helps a little bit, and then also introduces the ability to scale off-chain, which would help with exponential scaling and not just linearly scaling on-chain. And I saw that as like an amazing suggestion, and then I saw like the community get conflicted about it. There was a lot of FUD about SegWit, how it's bad, and it was unclear to me like why that was, because from my point of view, it's such a great solution. So I saw an opportunity for Litecoin to actually help the situation. So I proposed it to the team that we should actually try to activate SegWit on Litecoin, and to show that it works, show that it actually helps scale, and also that there's no security issue with it, because there was a lot of FUD about if you put money in a SegWit transaction that the miners can just steal it. So that's what we set out to do. So in 2016, we set out to implement SegWit on Litecoin and to try to convince the community and the miners to activate it. But then we ran into some pushback from the miners, because the miners kind of appreciated like SegWit, but they were miners in pools, but they were kind of against it for some reason. We don't know exactly why, but it felt like they didn't want to support SegWit for Bitcoin for specific reasons.
Was it because the whole issue had become politicized, or did they have actual technical?
It became politicized, and also there was, in 2017, Greg Maxwell figured out that SegWit actually blocked something called ASIC Boost. ASIC Boost is an improvement to mining that makes mining more energy efficient. But there's two kinds. There's a kind where so ASIC Boost is actually patented. So if miners were using it in the open, then they can get sued. So there's a way where they can use it covertly, so no one can tell that they're using ASIC Boost. But that way of using it covertly blocks SegWit. Basically, if SegWit activated, they can't do it covertly anymore. So I think people then realized this might be the reason why miners were so against SegWit.
And this would transfer over to the Bitcoin scaling debate as well?
Yeah.
That could happen.
So and people were wondering if that's the reason why the scaling debate was so contentious, why people were so against SegWit, which from my point of view is such an awesome solution. So I guess maybe you guys can talk about the kind of troubles we ran into trying to activate SegWit on Litecoin. So it's development-wise, it wasn't hard, but it became a political fight.
Yeah, it was mostly to do with them not wanting it to be implemented on Bitcoin. So it was Wang Chun, wasn't it?
Yeah, F2 Pool's
F2 Pool, the owner of that, who kind of messed around quite a lot. We were saying, I was going to support SegWit, I'm not going to support SegWit. But what we had was every single time he said he was going to support it because he had so much hash power in his pool, the price of Litecoin actually went up. So it showed you what the actual people wanted to happen, but the miners stood in the way. Of course, this is where I kind of touched on earlier with Shaolin Farm UASF, where the miners were eventually forced into accepting SegWit in the face of economic defeat.
Yeah, I think another very important reason that miners do not like SegWit is because Segwit is going to enable Lightning Network, which is going to put a lot of transactions off-chain, and the miners cannot get fees from those transactions. But if they stop Segwit and then increase the block size, they are going to hold even more transactions, and they can profit more from that. So I think that's another important reason for them to stop Segwit. And because all these miners that stopped Segwit are mostly from China, so I had to communicate with them a lot during that few months. And the most impressive one that talked to me over phone for about one hour is a guy from LTC, one top mining pool, I think. Yeah. So that guy told me it's very critical to them. We need to make money from that. And we had to stop it. I told them, it's very unethical to do that. If you do that, you may create a profitable company, but you guys are going to be hated by the community. But that guy said, I don't care, I just need to make money. Taking care of the society is not my responsibility. It should be the responsibilities for those charities. We are a profit-making company, so we don't care about social responsibilities. Yeah, it's pretty funny to me.
So one of the things with cryptocurrency that we've seen, it's just been so difficult across all currencies to implement changes. It's slow, it's contentious, you end up with all this toxic tribalism in the space. But one of the things that I love about Litecoin is that it just moves so much faster than the other coins. You know, one side of things you say, well, it's better to go slowly because you can be conservative. But you've just seen Litecoin at the forefront of all of these things, you know, testing out systems before the rest of the cryptocurrencies get on board. So you seem to walk this fine line between being this decentralized currency but being able to spearhead changes in the system.
Yeah, I think, well, I guess the major difference is I'm still around. So with Bitcoin, Satoshi left. So being like a centralized leader, it's good and bad, right? So the good thing, like you mentioned, is that we can be quicker to make decisions, right? So there's no people fighting about what's Charlie's vision. Is Charlie's vision this or that? Because I can just come out and tell you what my vision is, which I did today, this morning.
Satoshi likes vision.
Yeah. And so, like, for example, like Segwit, right? Last year, I came out and talked to the community and convinced the community that Segwit is the right path forward for Litecoin. But still, it was actually kind of hard to get it pushed through, right? So the reason why, so back then when I was thinking about it is, if the people want it, how come it's so hard to push this through? So that's why the idea of the user activist soft fork came about, which is there's a misconception that miners have all the power in upgrading the network. In reality, the users do. Mm-hmm. So if users decide to activate Segwit on Litecoin and miners don't mine a Segwit transaction or try to steal from it, then there will be an invalid fork of Litecoin. So that's the idea, that users actually have full control over the network. And I guess back to your question, so the downside of having like a centralized figure is that it's more easily be coerced, right? So if, let's say, the government decides they want to coerce the Litecoin network to censor a transaction, they might come to us and say, you have to change the code to censor these transactions, otherwise they'll put us in jail. So
even if the government did that, I mean, how viable is that option? Because you'd have to get people.
It's not that viable, right. But it's more of a possibility in Litecoin than with Bitcoin. So Litecoin is a little bit more centralized. But if they did that, I would just step away and say I'm not going to work on it anymore. And even if if we did work on a software change that is bad, people would just reject it, right? They don't have to run. The beauty about cryptocurrency is that users can run the software if they choose to, and if they don't choose to, they won't. So in the end, it's still decentralized, but there is definitely some centralization with Litecoin. And the good part is that we can move faster. Yeah, it seems to have been an advantage for Litecoin for sure. Any other thoughts on the fine line that Litecoin seems to walk between having, a centralized foundation, for example, and a decentralized currency?
I think
None.
you're pretty,
None at all.
pretty comprehensive on that one.
The other thing is that Litecoin Foundation, people have to realize there's a difference between Litecoin Foundation and Litecoin, right? So the Litecoin Foundation is centralized, but the Litecoin currency and network is decentralized. So our mission for Litecoin Foundation, so it's confusing because I'm also part of the Litecoin Foundation, yet I created a currency. So our mission is to foster adoption and also work on development of Litecoin. But if we fail in that mission, someone else can step up and do a better job. So one example is that actually a few years ago, we had something called the Litecoin Association, which is similar to what we have now with the Litecoin Foundation. But the Litecoin Association wasn't really doing a good job, and they kind of just disappeared. So that's when we decided to form the Litecoin Foundation to step up and do a better job than the Litecoin Association did.
And what was the process in choosing, who would make up that foundation, who would be the initial board members?
It was just
The
few of
people
us
that
that
are
were
still left behind.
that were
that
still
way.
passionate about Litecoin. and
It was
wanted to-
after a long bear market. The association basically dissolved after the 2013 bubble, where it went all the way up to 40, came down, and you really separated those who were passionate about the project versus those who were just there to speculate, mess around, and make money.
It's always a nice filtering mechanism, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
It's mainly merit-based, I think.
Yes.
Yes.
And also for this year, I mean, I'm really happy to see the Litecoin Foundation volunteers are still really excited about Litecoin, even though the price has dropped like 70, 80%.
Yeah.
Right. So people are actually passionate about the project, about the coin, and not about just making money.
And it's interesting, like the longevity of Litecoin. We have gone through some terrible bear markets. You've seen, I think someone posted this tweet the other day where they showed like the top 10 coins and coin market cap, 3 years ago or something, and hardly any of them existed anymore. They're just not things, and yet Litecoin has just kind of stood this test of time. It's interesting because it's not a coin that has earmarked funds in the same way that Dash does, or some of these coins where they can put money directly towards developers. They can put money directly towards marketing. So what you've seen, on the other side is this incredible grassroots movement around Litecoin, sort of picking up the slack there. You see just an incredible community forming around this coin. Can you talk a little bit about that community and how you've seen that evolve over the years?
Yes, so...
You guys are letting Charlie do all of the speaking.
No,
I know
I'm
we've got Charlie, we all want to hear him, but I do want to hear from all of you.
Trying to think, yeah. So they say after 2013, there was basically nobody left apart from Charlie, Zinzi, myself, and a few others, but they weren't willing to kind of step up into the foundation in that kind of way. But going through 2017, it then started, because of course price drives attention and interest in a project. So it was kind of good that way. But what we're seeing this time is that the volunteers aren't leaving. There's been some dropout, but nowhere near as much as we had last time.
So why do you think that is?
I think the project's become far more mature. There's a lot more support out there. So when I got involved in 2013, and probably you invested in 2011 perhaps, and you were here from the start, it was very much more just a speculative ride. This thing was brand new. Bitcoin was, like I say, people in 2013 thought Bitcoin was actually dead. But here we are, and it will, I assume, continue to do this. But I think with each time, we learn from history that these things aren't going away, so people stick with it, because they think next time it's going to be bigger, and we may come down, but then it'll just keep going and going. Because as we've seen, especially with stuff like Backett and the New York Stock Exchange parent company ICE, crypto is becoming accepted into all these big institutions for investors and traders. So it's really not this small projects anymore, and it's just going to keep going from strength to strength from here on. I think a lot of people can see it, which is why they're sticking through with it.
Mm-hmm. And Charlie, I wanted to talk about the inception of Litecoin as well. So when you first created Litecoin, you made changes that forked the code. And why did you choose those changes? What made that better than you think the existing system had to offer?
So, when I created Litecoin, it was mainly for fun. I didn't actually set out to do something, like I didn't think it's going to turn into this, right? So I was playing around with the Bitcoin code, and actually before I created Litecoin, there were quite a few altcoins, like about 10 or so.
Quite a few altcoins, like 10 or so.
A lot of
Times have certainly changed.
Yeah, it's because a lot of people actually today think that Litecoin is the second one, right? Litecoin was the second coin after Bitcoin, and that's why it became so popular. But in reality, when I launched Litecoin, it was the 10th coin. A lot of people were saying, like, why do you need another coin? And there were a lot of haters back then also.
Something's never changed.
Something's never changed. But the reason I did it is because all these other coins were actually launched in a manner that was very unfair. So what I mean by that is the creators pre-mined a lot of coins for themselves. So like up to 7 million coins for some coins. So they pre-mined 7 million coins for themselves, launched it, and tried to pump it. And hopefully if the price goes up or they can cash out of their... So people, and the creators did, right? So I saw a need for a coin that's fair, and also saw a need to create a kind of a complement. And that's exactly why I coined the phrase silver to Bitcoin's gold. I saw people using gold and silver way back when as money, and I saw that there's an opportunity to have an alternative to Bitcoin that is like silver to gold, and that's a bit faster, has a bit more in terms of quantity out there, and it's a bit cheaper, and that's kind of what I set out to do.
Mm-hmm. And then did you guys see a boost, like back when, I know that Bitcoin was just given a huge boost when WikiLeaks started accepting Bitcoin donations. And I feel like in the same way, it sort of put Litecoin on the map as well. Like you had this amazing site that was accepting donations in these two currencies, and none of the others. Like when did you see the turning point and you thought, okay, this is no longer just for fun, this is actually something that's gonna take off?
Trying to remember when. It's hard to say. I think when it hit, like the market cap hit $1 billion in 2013, I realized like this is not a joke anymore, right? It's actually, people have real money in this. And then promptly after that, it crashed like 90%.
You're like, I was wrong. But you weren't wrong because, it picks up again. The community is bigger than ever.
Yeah. There's going to be more of these cycles. That's the thing with cryptocurrency. I mean, Litecoin is even more volatile than Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. So right now we're down. I'm extremely excited that there's so many people showing up for the Litecoin summit, right? So.
Yeah, and looking forward to the future, I know that you've been tweeting a lot about privacy options. You're looking at things to integrate. So can we talk a little bit about that and how you've been making your decisions? What factors have you been considering?
So I like to talk to the community, ask them for what they think, right? So privacy is a controversial issue. So definitely want to get from the community what's the best option for Litecoin. So I don't like to make top-down decisions. A lot of people approached me and said they want me to tell them what to do, and my response is figure out how you can help Litecoin and just do it, right? You don't need me to tell you what to do. So similar for the upgrades to Litecoin. If someone's passionate about a project, they go out and do it, and if it's good, the community will like it and it will be adopted, right?
And then is this something that you then take to the foundation, and how does the mechanism work for this decision-making process?
The foundation doesn't make decisions for the Litecoin core project, so it's solely based on the project itself. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we try not to make decisions.
Yeah, we just support it financially. Mm-hmm. And we can definance it, but if someone else supports this, they can finance this team again. So
it's a way of sort of creating that balance of power so that no central authority can be making all of these big decisions.
Yeah, like I say, it's very much free market. Anyone can add code and run their own implementation of Litecoin. It's up to the users which version of that they want to run. It just happens that Litecoin Core is the most popular.
It's similar to Bitcoin. I guess we model after that.
And there seems to be a lot of, I mean, I know that all of the markets are correlated whenever you look at everything, it just moves at the same time. But a lot of the decisions seem to also be in line with what Bitcoin is doing in the core team and some of the decisions there. Have you ever had like major differences of opinion there where you're like, I don't quite agree with this, I'm going to take Litecoin in a different direction and see what the community thinks about this instead?
One thing we do differ from Bitcoin is the RBF implementation, so replaced by fee. So for Bitcoin, a transaction can be replaced if you pay a higher fee. For Litecoin, we removed that because I think it's a bit contentious and also we don't need it right now because our blocks aren't full. So things like that, we differ a little bit, but I think we all agree that we try to stick as close to Bitcoin Core as we can. Because Bitcoin has the best developers. I'm not going to lie about that. We don't even come close, right? So they make lots of great improvements to Bitcoin, and we effectively steal from them for free. So I like to joke that Litecoin developers include all of Bitcoin developers, so we're actually a better team.
But you guys seem to execute a little faster as well. So when SegWit was being discussed and you guys got in there first, you launched before Bitcoin Core did.
Yeah, so we can move faster, and for contentious things like SegWit, in the future maybe confidential transactions or other things that we can definitely move quicker and get it implemented. And the reason why, like people say, like, why do we need Litecoin when we have Bitcoin testnet? My answer to that is because Bitcoin testnet doesn't have monetary value placed on the token, so you can't test like the game theory part of Bitcoin, and it's actually the incentive structures. It's actually what makes Bitcoin work, right? So if there's no real money on the line, no one's going to try to attack it and steal money. Whereas with Litecoin and SegWit, the people put real money on the line, right? And because no one can steal from it, there's no more FUD about that anyone can spend, miners can steal SegWit transaction. So I think that's something that's really important.
Yeah, the other thing with Litecoin is it's good for pressuring change. So especially with SegWit, we led the way in showing that SegWit was safe and it was good as an implementation. And as a result of that, Litecoin skyrocketed in price up to $40. And it basically silenced all the miners who were saying, oh, this is going to be bad, this is going to be awful. Because if they accepted it, their assets would be worth far more. So eventually they gave in, like I said, but we did have to go through a UASF. But this is the thing, if you just have one coin, such as Bitcoin by itself, which is why I'm not a big fan of maximalism, you don't get this kind of support from stuff like Litecoin, which can show that this is what the market wants.
Or competition from like...
In a monopoly, if it was just Bitcoin in this space, well, you wouldn't have any option. But once users have that way to vote with their money and actually buy another asset because that's what they want to see in the code change, it sends a damn clear message to everybody else out there that this is the path the users want to take.
It's definitely an interesting question about what the future holds. I know that Andreas Antonopoulos is of the mind that our future isn't going to have one coin. In the past, we've seen everything sort of converge, and the market finds an option, and it tended towards gold. That was the option. But if we think about it, that isn't really how history has worked, because it depends on the context. We had gold, but then we also had all these nation-state currencies, and you also had cigarettes if you happen to be, in prison, or you had all of these things working concurrently. And Andreas says that the future is going to be thousands of tokens. The economy is going to be tokenized, and they're going to be interchangeable, and you won't know, what's happening under the hood. What do you guys think about the future? Do you think that, we are going to tend towards one currency, or do you think that that's just something that's happened in a previous bygone era where that's what technology allowed, and now perhaps tech allows for something different?
It's going to be a whole bunch of currencies. I mean, as I talked earlier about the Lightning Network, when you have the opportunity to jump onto another chain, the amount of privacy you have in your transactions is just unreal. It's going to be impossible to track these things. It's like these people who say, oh, we only need Bitcoin. Well, if you don't have another chain you can hop into, and of course Litecoin is a fantastic option for that because it has so much liquidity and support within the industry, and it's why we kind of stick so close to Bitcoin in a way. But yeah, there's going to be multiple currencies because they just provide benefits and strengthen each other.
Yeah.
At least two.
At least
Yeah, at least two.
the two that matter.
The future's going to hold twos of currencies.
A duopoly.
There will only be two.
Maybe.
Well, it definitely seems like, I mean, Litecoin and Bitcoin have both differentiated themselves. There are thousands, if not tens of thousands. Like I created my own currency. I didn't give it to anyone because I wouldn't do that to them. It's useless. It's terrible, But it stands out. It's stood the test of time. It's stood lots of bear markets in the past. So, I mean, I'd love to know your thoughts as well, Xinxi, about the future. What do you think it's going to hold? What's it going to look like?
Oh, I think the whole cryptocurrency market is still a huge experiment. And we are not sure which one will stay. But I think, so the current situation that Bitcoin is more like a store of value, but it's slow to transfer, it's expensive to transfer. But Litecoin is better for transfer of value instead of storage of value, although it's still a very good storage of value. Yeah, but maybe Ethereum type of cryptocurrencies for smart contracts could exist in the future as well, because people want to do a lot of things on the blockchain. Transfer of value is just one function of the blockchains. Running smart contracts could bring a lot of applications. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And also, like looking forward into the future and say 5 years into the future, no one really knows what's going to happen in this industry. And I feel like a lot of us are kind of in limbo. Newspaper articles are always coming out saying like cryptocurrency is a thing of the past. Bitcoin is dead 1 trillion times. Like, they just really don't get it. And we're sort of there thinking, well, how do we prove ourselves? When have we made it? So I'd love to know like your opinion. When has Litecoin made it? It seems to me like it's working. It has an amazing community. It's being used as currency. It's accepted by merchants. It's all over the world. Like, at what point can we say, yes, we've made it. This is a successful thing? Is there a line we have to cross before we get there? Charlie, we'll start. Everyone's looking at you. It's a success when I say it's a success.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking. But you're right, Litecoin is already working, right? It's working nonstop for the past 7 years. So it's actually working really well as money, right? It's censorship resistant, sound money, and people are transferring millions of dollars every day on the Litecoin network without any problems whatsoever. But I guess in order for it to be successful, I think, to be truly successful, you really want everyone, like, on this earth to be using cryptocurrency, to be using Litecoin and Bitcoin, right? So we're nowhere near there yet.
Do you think that we are ever going to get to the stage where everyone uses it? I mean, would you say that the US dollar is a success, even though people in other countries don't use it, or like iPhones, are they a success because not everyone has an iPhone? Like,
sure,
at what stage is like
you don't need like 100% of humans all using it, but you need like a significant amount, right?
What's your definitions of significant?
50%.
50%. All right,
That's a good target. Yeah, go ahead.
As I say, as long as everyone has access to Litecoin, as long as we can, bring them stuff so they can engage in this new market of digital finance. We have wallets for all different devices, and we even have one now that's working purely over SMS. So people in the third world don't even have internet connection can gain access to a Litecoin wallet and send and receive payments. So yeah, as long as we have access to that, we can't force people to use it, but as long as we give them the option, I think that's very important.
Right. And Xinxi?
I think to me, if my parents start to use Litecoins to buy things in the supermarket, then it's a great success.
I like that. My grandmother, she doesn't use cryptocurrency, but she talks about it now. I'll call her up and she'll tell me about like price movements and which countries she's heard on the news are getting into it. Like it's delightful because she's 93.
I think the real measure of success is if we're no longer needed, like the Litecoin Foundation or me, right? Because this is like a decentralized permissionless currency, right? So, for example, like the internet, there's no like internet foundation that's leading the internet. So I like to see
governments really try to set those up, don't they?
I like to see a future where people don't look up to me to decide like how Litecoin goes, right? Or just like this is people's money. So at that point, we don't need a foundation pushing for development and adoption of cryptocurrency or Litecoin because it will just happen by itself. And so when that happens, when Litecoin Foundation when it's no longer centralized, then it'll be successful.
And in terms of jurisdictions, where in the world has Litecoin traditionally been most popular? And have you seen any trends? Like, have you seen certain countries shift and start to move towards it that you think, oh, okay, that could be a potential future hub for use?
There's quite a few markets which you may not expect, which are huge fans of Litecoin. So the main one that comes to mind is Russia.
Oh.
They're huge into it. We also have China, the US, quite a few places in Europe. It's not necessarily as popular there. Latin America, most definitely, especially Venezuela, due to the recent collapse in the bolivar.
I mean, definitely, like, I know that we talk a lot about Bitcoin and say, well, Bitcoin, hold it up as this ideal of what money should be. But if we look at transaction fees, what's most important to people in Venezuela, for example, they really need microtransactions. They really need to be able to send really small amounts of money. And if it's going to cost even 10 cents to send that, they really can't afford it. So we look to other currencies like Litecoin to actually become popularized in those places.
Yes, pretty much.
And any like trends that you've seen, like different countries start to sort of wake up and realize that there are these currency options out there?
I think the emerging market within Africa is really catching on now. It's something we don't really talk about because I don't really have much access to it. There isn't really much support with exchanges. You don't see people trading whatever currency they use in South Africa or...
Is it a rand? Or?
Yeah, the rand, sorry. But they do exist out there, and it's becoming more and more popular within those places for whatever reason, and I think we should be reaching out there.
Yeah, for sure.
And to be fair, we're still pretty early with that. So most people in this space are in it for speculation or investment, and less about using it as an actual currency. I hope that changes over the next few years, and we're really pushing for that adoption and focus less on investment and speculation and more on actually using it as currency.
Well, I really appreciated your comments this morning, talking about the roots of Litecoin, talking about sound money, talking about an alternative currency that's not going to be hyperinflated away. I think it's so important, especially in a climate where people are just hyper-focused on price movements and investment opportunities, to say, well, cryptocurrency is around because it gives people a choice. No longer is this mandated option, you have to use this currency. If you're in Venezuela, well, you're screwed, right? There's nothing you can do. Suddenly we can say, well, actually, there is something you can do. You have options now. You have Litecoin. You can be making your everyday payments. So I think that it's just great to remind people of that, so that the conversation doesn't get hijacked.
Yep.
Yeah. So any final thoughts about the future of Litecoin, the future of the foundation as well? And let's say we're making a 5-year prediction. What do you think the world is going to look like for Litecoin?
I think the biggest problem for Litecoin to become a currency used every day is that it is too volatile at this moment. But if you check the history of volatility of Litecoin versus US dollars, actually it's decreasing. So in the future, if the volatility becomes very little, I think it could be stable enough to be used for everyday transactions. And I think this time could be like 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
10 years going to be used by everyone as an everyday currency.
I'm not sure it's going to be used by everyone. Maybe in some countries like Russia, it's not going to be used, but in some countries with more freedom, it could be very popular.
Right.
Yeah.
Franklin.
Yeah, I think in the first world, digital currencies are going to continue to mainly be an investment and store of value. We really don't have necessarily a use to use them as money here unless we're using them to move huge amounts across borders. The main reason we want them is because they are decentralized and only we control them. It's unconfiscatable value. But in emerging markets, like I say, they're the people who really need it. They will use Litecoin because of its use case, because they need to be able to receive money that isn't being devalued by the government as a hedge, or in order to send it to their friends, or in order to pay for something. But like I say, in the first world, it's not really designed for us as a currency more than it is just a way to invest and store our wealth.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, here in the U.S., it's hard for a cryptocurrency to compete with like using dollar for purchases, because, but it's not like we're not working towards it. But right now, like if you're swiping a credit card, it's extremely easy, right? It works, it's fast, and we kind of have to. That's the target, right? We have to get there where using Bitcoin and Litecoin, it's just as fast and easy compared to using credit card. And then once that happens, people will realize the difference, right? One is sound money, where money you control, versus money that can be inflated and taken away by the government.
Right.
So definitely countries like Venezuela and others are feeling more pain, and they're more quick to realize the benefit of cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
But I truly believe all fiat currency will go through hyperinflation and will.
Definitely seems to be
Yeah.
a trajectory.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's no fiat currency has lasted more than like 300 years or something like that, right? So
Don't they actually say, isn't the number like it doesn't last more than 50 years or something? Then if you look at like the Bretton Woods agreement, that like we're kind of coming up to 50 years of the US dollar. Like what's the future hold if we're now, how many trillion, like 20 something trillion dollars in debt? You know, what happens? Like, I mean, just on that question, looking towards the future, I just want to know, it seems that cryptocurrency poses an immense threat to government power. They've had a monopoly on the money supply, and cryptocurrencies come around and they've said, okay, well, now you've got a choice. Even Germany at the moment is saying we no longer want to accept US dollars as a reserve currency. So you see the movement of the world kind of going away from government, from especially US government money. And I just wonder, like, are they going to try and shut down cryptocurrency? Are they going to try and put on like a stranglehold, keep their monopoly of power for the money supply? What does regulation look like in the future for cryptocurrency? Are we going to see a massive battle ahead of us? Right, Xinqi?
Maybe we start from Charlie first.
So the beauty about cryptocurrency, or Litecoin and Bitcoin specifically, is you can't shut it down, right? So they will try, and they will find out that they can't shut it down. So, yeah, I mean, I think it will become pretty controversial in the future. I think I believe the U.S. government has started wars because others are not willing to use the U.S. dollar as reserve currency, for example, and this is something that they will fight really hard to protect. I should say we will fight really hard to protect, and I truly believe that Bitcoin and Litecoin are sound money, and it's the future of money. I don't know what would happen in the future, but it'll be exciting to be in this space.
Sure. Any final thoughts from the two of you?
Yeah, I was going to add on to when you said no money lasts beyond 50 years, what was it you said?
It seems to be like a figure that's thrown around on the internet.
The oldest fiat currency still around, if I recall correctly, is actually the Great British Pound, which is just under 400 years.
But hasn't that, that's not the same British pound that existed at inception. That's undergone a lot of changes before it was actually backed by...
It's undergone a lot of changes, and the thing is, its value over those many years has only gone down. It's become weaker and weaker with purchasing power to a point where it's not even worth 1% of what it originally was. With Litecoin and cryptocurrency, it's scarce. It's a commodity And it's why we kind of invest in it and it keeps going up, because we realize that it is a very good investment. In fact, the best we've potentially ever seen. There's a fixed supply. We could always mine more gold. We could always find it in space somewhere. But the other thing is, with cryptocurrency, no one can take it away from us. Once we own it, we own it. And it's a very powerful political and social tool, like you say, against governments and to socially better yourself.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is why, of course, cryptocurrency is clearly going to be far outliving fiat currencies.
Absolutely, and amen to that.
Yeah, I think a country's income has two sources. One is money printing, the other is tax. So the reason why fiat money doesn't last long, I think, is a very important reason is that they have wars. During wartime, they can't have enough tax to support the army, so they have to print a lot of money. And with this money printing, there will be hyperinflation. That's why eventually all the fiat currencies, the value just depreciated dramatically. I think, yeah, to solve this problem, we have to have something like cryptocurrency to limit the total amount that you can have. Yeah, I think so far I see cryptocurrency is the only viable solution. Although gold can be one, but it's forbidden by the government as a currency. It's not easy to transfer. It's physical. You can't take it conveniently. Police can check your pockets for the gold very conveniently. But if it's cryptocurrency, you can do that very conveniently on the internet through cryptography, and nobody knows it. I think that's the only solution for now.
Right. Well, we definitely don't know what's going to happen in the future. We don't know what's going to happen with government money or cryptocurrency. What we do know is now we have a choice, and people get to decide for themselves, and that, for me, is the most exciting thing about cryptocurrency. So we'll have to wait and see what happens, and people will just make the best decision for them, which it seems to me, as you've all just said, it seems to be in the realm of cryptocurrency, sound money. So I really look forward to seeing that happen and seeing people have more power than they've ever had. So thank you so much for chatting with me and being here. And that does conclude the end of day one for the Litecoin Summit today. So thank you all so much for being here.
If you like my channel, please hit the like button and be sure to subscribe. I also have a Patreon account and wanted to give a special shout out to all the awesome people there. And a huge thank you to the sponsors of the show for making these videos possible. Thanks so much for watching.
She used to just party.